Hope everybody's doing great. So this is the first episode of American Teacher, and I'm excited. And I'm gonna go a little bit more into my philosophy towards the end, and you'll get kind of an idea about it. But we're gonna discuss a variety of things: constitutional issues, ethical issues, policy issues, checking in issues. Because I hope everybody's doing really well. I know, this country going through some things, right? We're going through some turmoil. Everything's not easy for so many other people, and I'm sorry for whatever you're going through. It's been kind of a rough summer for me too. But let's get straight into the first issue. We're going to talk about the Iran war, and I'm going to start with some imagery. So I want you to imagine a king. What kind of accountability do you think a king has? Well, king doesn't really have to have any accountability to anybody, right? I mean, a king can kind of do whatever the hell a king wants to do, right? He doesn't have to weigh or measure his actions against the blood of his subjects or the treasure spent, right? He can do what he wants to do. Now, he, of course, can be accountable if he chooses to be. Maybe the queen's got him under his thumb or something, but he doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be accountable to anybody. We weren't fond of King George. We didn't really like the monarchy, so we went forward with the system that we have today. So in our system we have today, let's talk about the president. The president definitely has some powers when we can talk about war, right? Under Article 2, he's the commander-in-chief. And that's significant. The commander-in-chief has power to act. If there's an emergency, if there's an imminent threat, he doesn't have to wait around. He doesn't have to deliberate. He can act. So, like, if a fist is coming at us, right? He has every right to protect us and counter. If there's an enemy at the gate, he has every right to act. Even the most zealous supporters of legislative power does not want the president to wait around to do something. We need him to be that George Washington, right? We need him to act. We need him to act forcefully to protect the American people. So, that being said, that power is still fenced. It's a narrow power. The founders were very protective of that kind of authority because the consequences can be quite dire. And we see that. We see that in the results of what the consequences of war are. We always have. In other words, we want to make sure we're making the right decision. So the next question I'm going to ask, well, did Donald Trump act from an imminent threat? So I think the best way to look at it, and the most sensible way to look at it, is like, what did the people that were closest to him, what did they say to him? What did the people designed as so-called experts within the executive branch, what did they tell him? Well, so the intelligence community said, hey, Iran is not close to building a bomb at this point. In other words, I'm not saying they didn't have uranium. I'm saying they didn't say they weren't having uranium. They weren't building a bomb. At that moment, Iran was not an imminent threat. Now, when he was asked about that, what did Trump say? Well, he said, well, I believe that Iran is a threat. Now, I want to look at that statement because here's the thing where I'm standing, you're going to know about me, is that I respect good arguments. I always respect good arguments. But if I have a student that comes up to me and says, well, I say, well, first of all, I say, hey, what is your support for believing X? And he says, or she says, well, my support is I believe. That's not adequate. You have to have a chain of reasoning. You have to be able to refer to something to support, make a deductive argument, support your argument in some sort of way that's convincing. And that wasn't. But even if you say it's not convincing, here's another part, right, that is important. Months earlier, the administration said their capacity had been obliterated. So you don't go from obliterated to imminent threat. I think we can kind of agree on that. Okay, so I'm going to pivot to something else because I can kind of almost hear what a good argument is, because I've said it to myself. Is like, well, who cares, right? This decision should still be made to go to war because Iran Forget about the constitutional right to do it, but hey, we're going to agree with the president because Iran's a terrible nation and this is the right thing to do, right? They've destabilized the nation. They've violated so many human rights. They've sort of proxies that are dangerous to the world. We should do something. And I get that. And we did do something, right? We don't want them to get a nuclear weapon. So we had, in 2015, we had the GCPOA. The GCPOA at least had eyes on the ground, and Iran was accountable to something. Now I hear the argument again. Hey man, it wasn't a perfect deal. Okay. So here's the thing I'm going to ask you, anybody that's, we're discussing this, is like, it was a bad deal. Trump recognized it, 2018, ripped it up. And his logic is, we're going to make it better because that's a crap deal. Well, maybe it was an imperfect deal. It held them accountable to a certain degree, but okay, I'm going to give Trump this. We need to limit their capacity even more. So we're going to do something about it. So I hope you do something better. So we send, first of all, here's my first line. If you're a doctor, you send a doctor to put out a fire. You send a construction worker to do brain surgery. You have somebody that does brain surgery be a construction worker. So we sent Jared Kushner in as one of the negotiators who happens to be a real estate expert. Good. He's great with building things. But we had him negotiating the architecture of nuclear restraint. Think about that. I'm just going to criticize that on some level. But hey, you know what? I would say, Mr. Ward, if you were to say, who cares? Let's get a negotiation in place. And we did, and there was some progress made. But you know what we did? The executive branch with Congress, not with Congress making the decision, not us making the decision, but with Israel, decided to attack Iran. Boom. Trust is gone, right? We just lost that. And there were a couple things. You're like, okay, who cares? They're terrible. Who cares? We don't trust them. Why do we need them to trust us? So I thought about this because, first of all, we got to learn from history. Trust. We don't trust a nation. Why do nations get nuclear weapons? Now, there could be many reasons. But really the primary reason for any nation state, I think every nation state ultimately wants to survive. Even if we say they're irresponsible, they're a suicidal nation state, right? They're crazy, we can't trust them, I get it. But at the end of the day, the Revolutionary Guard, the extremists in Iran want to stay in power. If you don't trust, right, especially a superpower, it's a pretty good motivation to get a nuclear weapon. Right? So nations get nuclear weapons to protect their sovereignty, to protect their nation. If you're going to go in negotiations and all of a sudden attack Iran, you're incentivizing them to get a nuclear weapon. Here's the counter to what I'm saying. Again, I'm always got to think this out because I can hear it being said. Who cares? We're going to use the art of surprise, like the art of war, deception. Hey, we're negotiating with you. We're taking you out. We don't think you're negotiating in good faith. We're just going to do what we want to do and we're going to attack you. Beautiful. I love that. Good. Go after the bad guys. I don't agree with the constitutional process. You want to take them out? Take them out. How did we do it? We did it very weakly. Now, President Trump, and I would ask you this directly, art of the deal. Do you believe that they should have, and anybody else? Do you believe in leverage? I believe in leverage. Leverage is important for negotiations. If you have stronger leverage, you're going to get a better deal. And if you don't have that leverage, you better fake it and you better make somebody believe that you do. We gave up those cards. We lost the straight. We were not in a better place when we attacked because we didn't have an understanding of the larger strategic consequences of what was going to happen. And I don't know if his military advisors, I need to look at the details again. I think he was warned. But there's a fundamental error we made strategically, which it didn't get through to the president. It didn't get through to the executive branch. A weaker power doesn't have to win. I'm going to say it again. I see this stuff all online. It's like, oh man, we're blowing them up. We're messing them up. You're damn right we're messing them up. That's great. That's great. Are we winning? Is it preventing them from compromising the strait? No. And you're asking, well, it's going to happen and we're weakening them. No, it won't. Because let me tell you something that we should have learned. And we did learn in Vietnam. Those brave men and women that fought in Vietnam, who I often feel were very disrespected for the war that they fought, right? Is that you don't have to win your military can still win, and you can lose a war if the weaker opponent just holds out. When I teach the Revolutionary War and I talk about a war of attrition, now we won some big battles. Washington was the man, right? But we were knocking out officers. We were using guerrilla warfare tactics. We were a pain in the ass to England, and that helped win the war. I mean, you look at these things, and they play a big role. So, we haven't learned our lessons from the Middle East, right? We've helped radicalize the country even more. When we took out the Shah, right? We kind of created the very monster we're fighting now too, right? So losing leverage, radicalizing, increasing the incentive to have a nuclear bomb, it's all kind of a mess. You know what the mess, when you're trying to figure this mess out, do you know what branch is pretty good at figuring out these kind of costs and benefits? It's Congress. That's what Congress was designed for, deliberation. So you can think things out and you can measure what the actions will be. So now we're going to pivot. We're going to say strategically it didn't work out. The president probably exceeded its authority. The taking out of the Shah, which I think I brought that up a little while ago. Maybe I didn't bring it up. Taking out the Shah radicalized that country, or taking out a leader there. So we're left with, well, what should we have done? I'm going to ask a fundamental question to everybody right now. What does liberty mean to you? Does liberty mean your life? Does it mean your wages? Does gas prices matter? The blood of your children matter? What are you willing to give up? So John Locke believed everybody was born with an inalienable right. And it is the job of our government to be caretakers of that liberty. And I tell that to their students, caretakers. So they were very fearful of power in all the branches. So the idea is to balance that power out, separate it in a way, and make sure that when decisions were made, they were made in a way in which we, the people, held the government accountable for what they would do. Where the ledger stands now is you have been given a bill that you didn't get a chance to contest, right? England gave the colonists a bill without adequate representation. You were not given adequate representation. Congress has been weak. Congress has failed you. The War Powers Resolution was designed to hold the president accountable by Congress, and we haven't. It's allowed the president to do what he wants to do and not make his case to the American people, and Congress has not facilitated that. The president still needs to act within the guidelines of an imminent threat within the Constitution in good faith, and Congress was supposed to do that. Here's what I'm not going to do. A lot of people don't like what Donald Trump has done. I am not about partisan politics. I am about the branches of government that are supposed to do what they're designed to do, which is protect your liberty, we the people. And there's been a catastrophic failure to hold our government accountable for all the reasons and things that are going wrong in this war that we should have had a right and a say in. Our representative bodies, your congressmen, your congresswomen, your senators, right, that hear your voice need to go in and they need to argue zealously about the costs and benefits of a war with Iran. And before you fund a president and give them a blank check under a war powers resolution, which was never designed to do that, you need to think about it. This is the way that I think about liberty, and I think it's helped clarify it. The Nest is a place, I don't know if you ever see Jackie and, God, what's the other eagle's name? I can't even think right now. They're the famous eagles, and I'm having a brain fart right now. But they have the Nest, right? In Shadow, Jackie and Shadow, they have the Nest. The Nest to me represents the institutions. When everything is going right, and you raise those fledglings in the correct way, and the Nest cultivates them in the proper way. When the fledgling flies, and in that moment escapes the nest, in that moment we see liberty in flight. Liberty in its most perfect moment. But it only got there because of the parents. The parents were a caretaker of those fledglings. They cultivated them in a way in which liberty could be free. That's what institutions are, and they should be. When the institutions are corrupt, liberty in flight doesn't happen. And when liberty in flight doesn't happen and something else happens, it feeds back into a loop in which the nest itself becomes corrupt and the institutions become the corrupt. So it's almost like a circular type thing. What I'm going to ask all of us to consider is not about being a Democrat or a Republican. It's about being an American that expects our government to protect our liberty. Because one of the things I hate about what's going on in this country, it's like the partisan politics. Now, yes, party matters, but parties shouldn't come before the things that the founders were trying to protect. And one of the most consequential decisions that we could have is to go to war. And this is just one example. We're going to talk about this a lot. We're going to talk about how we've lost sight with what this nation should be. I hate partisan politics because what ends up happening is we can't think objectively. We're either, it's all about going after Donald Trump or overly supporting him and not thinking about, well, what's happening to our country? Is Congress doing its job? Is the president doing his job? I would say in this instance, both have failed you. I'm not even going to go into which party is more to blame at this point. It's been an institutional failure. And we could go into the causes of how we could see the far right going too far right, and then talk about the left and how they went too far to the left, and how this comes about in the same way we could talk about how extremism comes about in Iran on two different levels. Of course, that's a debate I would love to have, because you got to think about the causes, right? What's corrupting the nest? Why didn't the fledglings fly? Why aren't we seeing liberty in flight? And why are we not seeing liberty in flight in this nation now? That's a question I want to ask everybody. Because the name calling and the blame, while people are struggling, I've been struggling this summer, man. I've got a cat that's pretty much blind right now. I could barely pay for the bill. And I feel she had a bad accident with the anesthesia. She had to get surgery and she can't see. And it's been tough for me. I mean, I'm in a lot of debt. I'm struggling. Costs have gone up. It's rough. And I wish everybody well. Obviously, I get emotional over this, but I hope that everybody takes care of themselves, has had a good weekend, and I wish you the best. And we're going to get on. We're going to have another discussion soon. This went way past because I do this too much. But everybody take care.